I was sitting in my office, the dim light from the lamp casting dancing shadows on the walls, when the phone rang. It was one of those nights where the silence was almost palpable, broken only by the sound of the wind outside. I picked up the phone, somewhat reluctantly. "Hello, Thompson Investigations," I answered, expecting it to be just another case of infidelity or something equally mundane. "Jack Thompson?" The voice on the other end was hoarse and seemed to be whispering. "You need to know about Flight 784. It's reappeared in Taiwan." My mind took a second to process that. Flight 784 was a legend in the aviation world, a plane that had disappeared 20 years ago without a trace. "Who are you? How do you know this?" I asked, but the line had already gone dead. I knew I couldn't ignore that call. I dialed Emily Harper, an investigative journalist I had met during a previous investigation. Emily had an insatiable passion for the truth and an incredible nose for intriguing stories. "Emily, it's Jack. I've got something you'll want to hear." The next morning, I met Emily at a cafe near my office. She was already there, her laptop open and a nearly empty cup of coffee in front of her. "So, what's the big story?" she asked, a curious gleam in her eyes. "I got a call last night. Something about Flight 784 that disappeared 20 years ago. It seems it's reappeared in Taiwan," I said, watching her reaction. She raised an eyebrow. "That's impossible, Jack. But if it's true, it could be the biggest story of my career. Let's go to Taiwan." Convincing her editor wasn't hard. Emily had a track record of impactful reporting, and he knew there was something big here. In less than 24 hours, we were at the airport, ready to board for Taipei. When we arrived in Taipei, the city was shrouded in a mysterious fog, as if even the weather was conspiring to heighten the suspense. Our first stop was the home of one of the relatives of the passengers from the reappeared flight. We were greeted by an elderly woman, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and fear. "My name is Jack Thompson. I'm a private investigator, and this is Emily Harper, a journalist. We've come to talk about Mr. Lee, who was on Flight 784, I said, trying to be as sensitive as possible. The woman nodded and led us to the living room. "He's back, but he's not the same. It's like he's here, but his mind is somewhere else," she said, her voice trembling. Emily leaned forward. "Could we see him?" She led us to a small room where a man sat in a chair, staring blankly at the wall. He seemed to be in a trance, muttering something unintelligible. "He just stays like that, saying words that don't make sense," the woman explained. We tried to talk to him, but it was useless. We left the house with more questions than answers. The next day, we went to the airport where the flight had reappeared. The place was swarming with onlookers and journalists. We managed to get an interview with one of the pilots who had been at the airport the night the plane reappeared. I saw strange lights in the sky, forming a pattern I'd never seen before. The pilot said, his eyes still showing a trace of fear. Right after that, Flight 784 landed as if nothing had happened. But those passengers, something was wrong with them. As we explored the airport, Emily found something in the pocket of one of the passengers, a note written in code. "Jack, look at this," she said, handing me the paper. The note was full of symbols and numbers, something straight out of a spy movie. "This just keeps getting stranger," I said, looking at Emily. She smiled, that smile that said she was ready to face any challenge. "We'll figure this out, Jack. Together, like always." And so, with the enigmatic note in hand and a mystery growing deeper, we began our investigation. Little did we know we were only scratching the surface of something far bigger and more sinister than we could have imagined. Interruption for a moment to ask for your help. Please like, follow us, and click the bell so you can receive our videos and help the channel grow. We were sitting at the small table in our hotel room, surrounded by papers, maps, and notes. The coded note we had found in the pocket of one of the passengers from the reappeared flight was spread out before us, an enigma waiting to be solved. I couldn't take my eyes off it, while Emily chewed on the end of her pencil, absorbed in her own thoughts. "Jack, I think I've got something here," Emily said, breaking the silence. Her words snapped me out of my trance. "Let me see," I replied, leaning in closer. Emily began to explain her reasoning. "Look, these numbers and letters seem to follow a pattern, like a substitution cipher, and if we replace these letters with specific numbers, we get coordinates." "Coordinates?" I asked, intrigued. "Yes, geographical coordinates. What if this cipher is leading us to a specific location?" I grabbed the map we had brought, and Emily began transferring the numbers onto it. To our surprise, the coordinates pointed to a location on the outskirts of Taipei, an old abandoned hangar. "We have to go there," Emily said, determined. I agree, but we need to be cautious. We don't know what might be waiting for us, I warned. The next day, we took a taxi to the outskirts of the city. The hangar was located in a deserted industrial area, surrounded by dense vegetation and rusty fences. When we arrived, the atmosphere was oppressive, almost as if the place had been forgotten by time. Emily and I entered the hangar carefully, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. The air was thick with the smell of rust and mold. Old aviation equipment was scattered across the floor, some covered in dust, others damaged by time. "Look at this," Emily said, pointing to a corner of the hangar. There was an old table, covered with yellowed papers and a worn leather journal. I picked up the journal and began to leaf through it. "This belonged to a pilot named Richard Hale," I said, reading the inscription on the first page. "He disappeared decades ago." "Let me see," Emily requested, taking the journal. She read aloud a passage that caught her attention. "I was investigating a magnetic anomaly near the Penghu Islands. Something strange is happening there. I need to uncover the truth before it's too late." "Penghu Islands?" I repeated, thoughtfully. "We need to go there." Emily agreed, and that night we arranged our trip. The next day we took a boat to the Penghu Islands, a remote and mysterious archipelago. Upon arrival, we were greeted by a local fisherman, Mr. Lee, who seemed to know the area well. "You're the Americans who came to investigate the missing planes?" he asked, his gaze full of curiosity. "Yes, sir. We need to know more about these disappearances," I replied. Mr. Lee nodded and invited us to sit in his small cabin. As we sipped tea, he began to share his stories. "Many years ago, planes started disappearing here. It always happens during a thick, mysterious fog. Some say it's a curse. Others believe it's something more scientific, maybe a magnetic anomaly." "Have you ever seen anything like that, Mr. Lee?" Emily asked. "Yes, I have. Once, I was out at sea when a plane appeared out of nowhere and then vanished again into the fog. It was as if time itself was playing tricks on me," he replied, with a distant look in his eyes. "We need to investigate this area," I said, determined. "But be careful," Mr. Lee warned. "You're not the only ones interested in these phenomena." That night, as we prepared to explore the area Mr. Lee had mentioned, I realized we were being followed. Shadowy figures moved in the distance, watching our every step. "Emily, we're being followed," I whispered, feeling a chill run down my spine. "We need to move quickly and quietly. We can't let them stop us," she replied, the determination in her eyes shining in the moonlight. And so, with our hearts racing and adrenaline pumping through our veins, we ventured into the darkness, heading toward the unknown. The mystery of Taiwan's ghost flights was only beginning to unfold, and we knew we were about to uncover secrets that could change everything. The sea breeze of the Penghu Islands was refreshing, but it couldn't ease the tension we felt. Emily and I walked slowly along the rocky shore, our eyes scanning for any signs of wreckage. The fisherman we had met the previous day had told us about a specific area where he often saw planes disappearing into a mysterious fog. Now, we were there, immersed in a mystery that seemed deeper and more dangerous with every step. "Jack, look over there." Emily pointed to a metallic piece half buried in the sand. "It looks like part of an airplane engine." I approached the object, kneeling down to examine it more closely. It was indeed part of an engine, but not from a modern airplane. It looked much older, possibly from the 1960s or 70s. "This is getting stranger and stranger," I murmured, standing up. "How could wreckage from such old planes be here?" We continued our search, and little by little, we began to find more scattered pieces along the coast. Some were from modern planes, others from aircraft clearly much older. There was a feeling of desolation in the air, as if we were walking through a graveyard of flying machines. "Jack, check this out," Emily shouted, holding a strange device she had found among the wreckage. It was small, with a futuristic appearance, and emitted a faint frequency that was barely audible. "There's something really off about this," she said, handing me the device. "It seems out of place, like it doesn't belong here." Before we could discuss the device further, we heard heavy footsteps behind us. We turned quickly to see 3 armed men approaching, their expressions menacing. "Hand over the device," one of them ordered, pointing a gun directly at us. My heart raced. "Emily, run!" I shouted, grabbing her hand. We ran as fast as we could, our feet sinking into the soft sand as the men chased after us. Haven't you liked the video yet? Aren't following us? And haven't clicked the bell yet? Please take a moment to do it now and help the channel grow so we can make more videos. There, between those rocks, Emily pointed to a small natural hideout between 2 large boulders. We squeezed in, trying to control our heavy breathing. "Jack, what are we going to do?" Emily whispered, her hands trembling. "We need to get out of here and find a safe place," I replied, "and we need to figure out what this device is." We waited until the men passed us, then slipped out of the hideout and ventured further inland. We found a small remote village where the wooden houses were simple, and the locals eyed us with curiosity. "Let's see if anyone here can help us," I suggested, entering a house that looked like a workshop. Inside, we found an elderly man tinkering with an old machine. He seemed to be a retired scientist, surrounded by outdated equipment and dusty books. "Sorry for barging in like this," I began, "but we're in trouble and need help understanding what this is." I showed him the device. The scientist took the object carefully, his eyes widening in recognition. This is part of an experimental teleportation technology," he said, almost in a whisper, "developed during the Cold War." Emily and I exchanged incredulous looks. "Teleportation? That can't be real," she said. "It's real," the scientist insisted, "but it was abandoned due to its dangerous side effects, including the possibility of temporal accidents. This explains the ghost flights." "So, you're saying these flights are disappearing and reappearing because of a malfunction in this technology?" I asked, trying to process the information. "Exactly," he replied. "The device you found must be emitting a frequency that interferes with time and space, causing these disappearances." Emily sighed deeply. "We need to find out who's behind this and why they're using this technology." "I can help you understand more about the device," the scientist said, "but you need to be quick. If those armed men are after you, you don't have much time." We thanked the scientist and left the village, our minds buzzing with the new information. The mystery of Taiwan's ghost flights was becoming increasingly dangerous, and we knew the truth was hidden somewhere between the past and the present, distorted by a technology that should never have been used. I was sitting next to Emily in the small living room of the retired scientist, Dr. Chen. The room had an air of nostalgia, with old furniture and walls lined with shelves filled with dusty books. The pendulum clock on the wall ticked in rhythm with our anxiety as we waited for Dr. Chen's explanations about the device we had found among the wreckage. "Well," he began, adjusting his glasses with a trembling hand. "This technology was something we developed during the Cold War. It was an ultra-secret project, an attempt to create an instant teleportation method for military purposes. We called it Project Traveler." I was intrigued. "Dr. Chen, are you saying this actually worked? Teleportation?" "Yes and no," he replied. "It worked, but not in the way we expected. The initial tests showed promising results, but we soon discovered there were dangerous side effects. The technology didn't just move objects and people from one place to another. It also distorted time and space. Some of our first volunteers never came back. Others reappeared years later, with no memory of the time they were missing." Emily frowned. "So, the flights that disappeared and reappeared?" "Exactly," Dr. Chen confirmed. "It seems someone has reactivated this technology, and from what you've described, the temporal anomalies are still happening. This is extremely dangerous. Each use of the technology creates a distortion that could have unpredictable consequences." A chill ran down my spine. Who could be doing this now? And why? Dr. Chen sighed. "That's the most troubling part. In recent years, a multinational corporation, Neotech Industries, acquired old patents and documents related to Project Traveler. It's possible they're trying to recreate the technology for profit without fully understanding the risks. We need to get back to Taipei and investigate Neotech," I said, determined. "This has to be stopped before more lives are affected." Emily agreed. "I'm with you, Jack, but we need to be careful. We don't know who we're dealing with." We returned to Taipei and began our investigation with the help of local contacts. We discovered that Neotech Industries had an imposing headquarters in the city center with tight security. We decided that the best way to gather information would be to infiltrate the building. That night, we dressed in plain clothes and approached the Neotech building. We managed to enter disguised as maintenance workers, but we were soon discovered. 2 security guards approached us, armed. "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" one of them asked as they surrounded us. "We're investigative journalists," Emily replied, trying to stay calm. "We're here to expose the truth about what Neotech is doing." The other guard laughed. "You think you're going to leave here alive with that information? Take them to the boss." We were taken to a luxurious office where we met the CEO of Neotech, a tall and imposing man named Victor Wren. He looked at us with a cold smile. "Ah, the curious intruders," he said, crossing his hands over the desk. "So you found out about Project Traveler, haven't you? Unfortunately for you, you can't leave here knowing that." "You're messing with forces you don't understand, Wren," I said, angrily. "This technology is causing flights to disappear and reappear. People's lives are in danger." Wren shrugged. "A small price to pay for progress. Besides, the collateral damage is minimal compared to the benefits we can achieve. But I admit we haven't perfectly controlled the technology. Some tests have gone out of control." Emily stepped forward. "This is unacceptable. You're playing with people's lives." Wren stood up, walking to the window. "You don't understand. The potential of this technology is unlimited, but I see you won't cooperate. Guards, take them away." We were placed in an improvised cell within the building. The hours dragged on. as we thought of a way to escape. Finally, we managed to improvise an escape by taking advantage of a flaw in the surveillance. "We need to go back and disable the main device," I said, as we ran through the corridors. "I agree," Emily responded, "but this time, we need to make sure we succeed." We infiltrated Neotech headquarters again, this time with more caution. We found the room where the main device was being kept. It was a massive machine, with blinking lights and a constant hum. "We have to shut this down," I said, beginning to fiddle with the controls. Emily helped me, but suddenly, the device began to emit a high-pitched sound. "Jack, I think it's going into overload." Before we could react, a portal opened right in front of us, pulling us in with an irresistible force. And then everything went dark. "I can't believe you're not following us yet. Please like the video, follow us, and click the bell. Help us grow the channel." I could barely breathe. The warehouse where we were trapped had a strong odor of rusty metal and old oil. Emily was beside me, her eyes fixed on the door, waiting for any sign of movement. Suddenly the door creaked open, and the CEO of the corporation, a middle-aged man in an immaculate suit with a cold gaze, entered with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Welcome, Mr. Thompson and Miss Harper," he said, his voice as icy as his stare. "I imagine you have many questions." I tried to maintain my composure as I responded, my voice steady despite the tension I felt. "You could start by explaining why you're playing with such dangerous technology," I retorted. "Ah, yes. Human curiosity is a wonderful thing, isn't it?" The CEO walked slowly around the warehouse, stopping in front of a table cluttered with documents and electronic equipment. "The truth is, the technology was accidentally reactivated during a test. We had no intention of causing these incidents." Emily, always quick with her incisive questions, stepped forward. "And now? You can't control the technology, and you're causing more disappearances and reappearances of flights. What's your plan?" The CEO sighed as if the situation were merely a minor inconvenience. "We are working to stabilize the technology. However, things have gotten a bit out of hand. You wouldn't understand the complexity of what we're dealing with here." Before he could continue, I seized a moment of distraction and, with a swift movement, freed us from our restraints. Emily and I launched ourselves at the CEO and his guards, managing to disarm them and escape the warehouse. We ran without looking back, our hearts pounding frantically. After we had distanced ourselves enough, Emily looked at me, breathless. "We need to shut down the main device. It's the only way to stop all of this." I nodded, and we quickly devised a plan to infiltrate the corporation's headquarters. We knew it would be risky, but we had no choice. We blended in with the employees, and with the help of some forged badges we had taken from the warehouse, we entered the room where the device was located. The device was an immense machine, emitting a pulsating glow and a low hum that made my bones vibrate. Emily began typing frantically on the control panel, trying to access the systems and shut down the machine. "Jack, we need to hurry. This device is overloading," she warned, her voice trembling with urgency. Suddenly the hum grew louder, and the machine began to spark. The control panel flickered wildly, and a portal started to form in the center of the room, pulling everything around it with immense force. "Emily, watch out!" I shouted, trying to grab hold of her as the portal pulled us in. But it was too late. We were sucked into the portal, feeling reality warp and shift around us. When we finally emerged on the other side, we collapsed onto a hard, unfamiliar floor. I lifted my head, trying to make sense of where we were. "Jack," Emily whispered, pointing to the horizon. What we saw left us speechless. We were in an alternate future, where teleportation technology had radically transformed the world. Tall, futuristic buildings, floating vehicles, and people dressed in strange clothes, passed by us as if we were invisible. What happened here? I asked, still trying to process everything. Emily slowly stood up, her eyes fixed on the surreal landscape. Our actions in the present have changed the course of human history. We need to figure out how to get back and fix this, Jack. The fate of humanity is in our hands now. I nodded, feeling a mix of fear and determination. We didn't know what awaited us, but one thing was certain. Our journey was far from over. And this time we were fighting not just for the present, but for the future of all humanity. Leave a comment telling us what you liked and what you didn't like, so we can improve our stories. And also, leave a comment with a suggestion for a new story theme. And please like the video, follow us, and click the bell. Thank you very much, and see you in the next video.